Giles felt his father's eyes judging him as he took a seat behind the desk that didn't seem to belong to him any more than the rest of the furnishings in the house did. Even in death, his father made sure that Giles would always know the wrath of that disapproving stare. Giles promised himself to soon rid the room of the portrait. It would be one more step forward, allowing them all to fly free from beneath the burden his father had kept them under. Although the women of the house seemed to have already released their wings, while Giles was the Duke by the same name his father had been, upon the demise of the previous Duke just over a year ago, his mother, grandmother, and sisters had asserted themselves as though Giles had no say whatsoever, which he supposed he didn't. The ledgers sat untouched on the monstrosity of a heavy walnut desk before him. The entries, he knew, would be neat, meticulous, perfect, just like everything else in his father's life. With one exception, his son, his only son, and the one who, despite his utmost chagrin, inherited everything, including the title and responsibility that Giles had no wish for. He and his father had parted ways long ago, and as much as Giles was pleased he had avoided more time with the man, he was beginning to wish that he had, at the very least, learned a bit more about the responsibilities of running a dukedom. Part of him wondered if he should run the whole thing into the ground, just to spite his father's ghost. "Giles, are you in there?" His mother's knock on the door reminded him of why he would never do so. He could have easily done it to his father, but never to his mother nor his sisters. "Come in," he called back. She stepped in the doorway but stopped short, her eyes widening as she looked around the heavy masculine room, one that, as far as Giles was aware, had been off-limits to any woman for years now. "What in heaven's name are you doing, sitting here in the dark?" He hadn't lit a candle. The fire was in embers, and the heavy navy curtains that covered the window, but for the small crack between them, prevented much light from entering. His father's portrait above the fireplace across from him was hung upon hunter-green walls, while its gilded frame matched those that covered the rest of the room. The large mustard-yellow chairs across from the desk made it nearly impossible to walk across the room unencumbered. "I am pondering." "Right, yes," she said with a bemused expression on her still beautiful face. Her green eyes, under her auburn hair, glinted at him. "I do hope you are considering which of the women who will be in attendance tonight you might take an interest in." Giles groaned as he leaned forward, one hand running through his hair which he insisted on leaving about an inch too long for the current fashion. "Mother, you know I wish that you were not holding this ball tonight. I have no desire to wed. At least, not any time soon. And Giles," she said with that patience she had always possessed, patience that had not passed down to him. "You are the Duke now. And as Duke, you have certain responsibilities that include producing heirs. Elizabeth, you really should allow the young man to take a breath as Duke before you go shoving young self-important women into his arms." A true wide grin sprang to Giles' face at his grandmother's voice in the corridor, even as his mother shut her eyes and took a deep breath. He loved his straightforward grandmother as much as she had a soft spot for him in her crotchety old heart. His mother, ever the proper duchess, straightened her spine as her mother joined her in the doorway. Lady Winchester may now walk with a cane in hand, but she held herself as regally as any queen. "He is not so young anymore, and I hardly think, Mother, that a lack of women is an issue for Giles," she said. The sentiment had Giles standing up and gasping. "Mother!" "The issue," she continued as if Giles wasn't even there, "is finding the right woman for him." "And you have just the one, I assume,"